My name is Emma Blake, and I was still holding my grandmother's hand when my husband leaned in and said, "Grab your bag. We're leaving. Act like nothing's wrong." His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. That mismatch frightened me more than anything he could have said out loud. The house smelled like buttercream and fresh coffee. A caterer in a black apron floated past with a tray of sliders. My father laughed too loudly near the stereo. A banner over the mantel read, "Happy 85 Margaret," in purple letters that looked too cheerful for the air in my chest. Grandma's fingers, thin and warm, rested in mine, the same way they did when I was little and scared of thunder. Daniel brushed my wrist, our small signal to move. I stood smoothed, my dress kissed Grandma's hair. "Bathroom," I whispered. She blinked slow and foggy, like her eyes were waiting through sleep. On the patio, my sister Clara raised a glass and talked about family tradition and how lucky we are, and people clapped because that's what people do at parties. But when I looked up, Clara wasn't raising her glass to me. She was watching the back door, watching us. Not smiling, not waving, just waiting like someone who expects a door to lock. We drifted down the hallway lined with old photos. The frames were clean, too clean, no fingerprints, no dust, as if the house had been staged for strangers. Daniel guided me past the powder room and the coat rack. He opened the front door and let the late afternoon light fall across the floorboards. We stepped out together. On the driveway, he started the car and hit the locks. The click sounded small, but it echoed. He didn't put it in gear. He watched the rearview mirror, then the house, then me. "What's wrong?" I asked. "It's just a birthday party." "Something's very wrong," he said. "We won't fix it from in there." I wanted to argue, but something in his face stopped me. Not fear exactly. Calculation readiness. The look he wears when danger isn't just possible, it's already here. And through the windshield, I saw Clara at the back door. No smile, no toast, just a look that said she knew we weren't supposed to leave and was already deciding how to stop us. In that moment, I realized this wasn't a party anymore. It was a performance, and we had just stepped off stage. 2 weeks earlier, my phone lit up with my father's name while I folded laundry on our Brooklyn couch. We hadn't talked much beyond holidays and obligatory updates. Still, I answered the way you open a window when you're not sure if it's smoke or just the neighbor's grill. He sounded bright, practiced. They were throwing a party for Grandma Margaret's 85th at the old house on Maple Ridge Lane. The bakery on 3rd was doing the cake. A caterer was booked. Clara was his words, heading up logistics. "He wanted me there because you know how much your grandmother lights up when she sees you." I said I'd come. That night, while Daniel dried plates, I told him. He didn't say no. He asked, "Why now? Why the old house? Why such a big party for someone who loved lemon pie at a small table?" I said I owed Grandma for a lifetime of ordinary rescues, teaching me to drive on back roads, slipping quarters into my pocket for the book sale, standing beside me in a quiet way that made me braver. We drove up 2 days early. The Hudson glimmered, then fell away. We passed the baseball field where I split my lip on a bad hop, the library that smelled like paper and summer, the diner with the flickering neon coffee cup. Time looked scrubbed and bright, like someone had power-washed my childhood. The house wore its old white shutters and porch swing, but everything else felt new in a way that wasn't warm. Hydrangeas were impossibly blue. The welcome mat was new enough to squeak. A rental truck idled at the curb, while 2 men in polos carried folding chairs to the backyard. Inside, the scent of fresh paint smothered the cinnamon and paper smell I remembered. Every surface gleamed. Picture frames sat at deliberate angles. Clara swept in with a clipboard and air kiss. "You're early," she said, like it was a problem to solve. "Caterers on schedule. Dad's at the bakery. Try not to move anything." I found Grandma in her chair by the window, the pale blue shawl around her shoulders. When she saw me, her face brightened and softened at once. We talked about little things, radiators that hissed the winter that wouldn't end until she tugged Daniel's sleeve and called him David. I pretended it was a harmless slip. He pretended with me. Later, my father strode in with the cake like he'd baked it himself. Vanilla frosting, purple roses, perfect lattice leaves. He told the staff to set the charcuterie first, then the sliders, then salad, then cake. Keep coffee hot, keep music soft, keep everything perfect. Looks great, I said. It did. But the perfection felt like a cover, and I didn't know what it meant to hide. By late afternoon, neighbors and cousins filtered in with hugs that felt like greetings from a play. The bartender, in a crisp shirt, poured wine into glasses that looked like glass until they clinked wrong. Clara floated through the rooms like a woman auditioning for a role called Dutiful Daughter. She didn't eat. She didn't sit. She adjusted the banner until it could not be improved. Breathe, Daniel murmured when we crossed in the hall. His eyes were already searching the edges of the room. The backyard filled in layers, old friends, almost strangers, a photographer who found the flattery in every angle. Servers refreshed platters with a rhythm that felt choreographed, deviled eggs, caprese skewers, chicken skewers with a dusting of parsley. My father told the bartender he preferred scotch to bourbon and laughed like the distinction mattered. I stayed with Grandma. She tasted a corner of lemon cake Clara pressed on her, before dinner said it was too sweet, and watched me scrape frosting into a neat white drift. Her eyelids dipped between sentences. She gets sleepy late afternoons, Clara said, too fast already walking away. Daniel moved like a man inspecting a set. On the porch, he bent casually near the railing. In the hallway, he peered at the crown molding above the living room arch. At the buffet, he accepted a club soda he didn't drink. When I joined him, he asked if Grandma's pill organizer still lived in the downstairs medicine cabinet. It had for years. He left to check. I stayed and swayed with Grandma to a Four Tops song because it made the room easier to breathe. My father slid a hand on my shoulder and asked if I was happy to be home. It doesn't feel like home, I said. He laughed, the kind people use to bounce past an answer. Daniel came back with a quiet that hit me like cold air. The cabinet's empty, he said. Dust rings where bottles sat, clean gaps where they don't. Near the hedges, two men in sport coats stood like they were waiting to be called on stage. No plates, no drinks, just a manila folder tucked under one arm, a notary stamp peeking at the corner. A third man in navy scrubs slipped through the side gate with a duffel bag, nodded once at Clara, and disappeared down the basement steps. Clara's smile didn't crack, but her eyes tugged in that direction, and my stomach tightened. Home health, she said when I asked. A beat later, a friend helping out, why the basement kitchen's crowded, she said, and boosted the music a notch louder, the way you do when you're trying to drown the wrong sound. The photographer wanted golden light family shots, so he pushed us into a smiling clump on the lawn. Daniel stood behind me with his hand at my back, steady as a metronome. Breathe, he said again. I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to keep breathing. People drifted toward the buffet after the photos. A server parked a huge bowl of potato salad next to my father's beloved coleslaw. The bartender rolled fresh ice out to the coolers, and the tinkle of cubes sounded like stage directions. Daniel leaned close to my ear. Thin cables under the porch, he whispered. A tiny lens by the crown molding. Not power. Hidden. He hesitated. And the cabinet's not just empty. It was emptied this morning. I looked at Grandma's plate, 2 bites gone frosting, scraped aside her fork, fallen like it got tired. She smiled, the I'm fine smile that asks you to stop looking. I smiled back, because sometimes love is agreeing to be fooled for a minute, while you decide what to do next. On the patio, my father called for toasts. Clara lifted her glass and sold a version of us I didn't recognize. I felt the house tilt. Somewhere in that tilt, I heard Daniel's breath slow to the count he uses when he wants me to follow. I matched it. He led me to the hall, where the family photos hung, our faces marching up the years. He crouched at the third stair, the one that squeaks and lifted the runner's edge. A faint pry line marked the hardwood, the stain a shade too dark like a bruise, pretending to be normal skin. In the kitchen, he slid the silverware drawer forward, lifted the plastic organizer, and revealed a brown pill bottle wedged against the back. The cap wore a smear of pale residue. No label, no pharmacy stamp. The sight of it made the room feel narrower. Where's her beta blocker, I asked. Her diuretic, the pink sleep pill she hates. He took photos, instead of answering, bottle residue drawer light. A bright laugh popped in the living room like a balloon. The man in scrubs emerged from the basement with a duffel and a clipboard. He joined one of the men in sport coats in the den. Paper whispered between them. I saw the edge of a form stamped by a notary, a line waiting for a signature that looked like my grandmother's name without her hand. I backed into a frame, Grandma and me, at the county fair cotton candy on my cheek. The glass didn't crack, but the picture shifted and I straightened it carefully with both palms like I could fix more than the tilt. Clara appeared beside me with a smile that never reached her eyes. You good? She asked, voice soft like frosting. Who are they? I asked. Vendors, she said, then too quickly. Friends. Friends who don't eat, I asked. You should, she said, and the smile tightened. Eat, I mean. From the yard, someone called for candles. The room turned toward the cake. Servers cleared space on the coffee table. The bartender carried in seltzer. My father lifted the frosted centerpiece like a trophy. Phones rose. Voices tuned. Daniel's fingers tapped my hand twice, our yes, our now. They sang. Grandma leaned forward, lips pursed, breath thin and steady. The flames died. The clapping sounded like it came from another house. I cut her a small slice, skimmed the frosting, the way she likes set the fork on the right because she's right-handed. She lifted it after a pause like the fork had asked an unfamiliar question. The decision landed in my chest without drama. We weren't going to let politeness bury us. When the room's attention shifted, when laughter rose for a joke I didn't catch, Daniel tipped his head toward the hall. We moved like people admiring photos for the third time. No rush, no pause, just motion. In the entryway, the coat rack wore strangers' jackets. The mirror reflected faces that mostly looked like ours. The front door opened without sticking. Air hit my face and felt like permission. We didn't run. We didn't need to. We walked to the car and Daniel unlocked it like any husband leaving any party for any ordinary reason. Inside the locks clicked. He pulled away slow enough to look unremarkable. What exactly did you see? I asked, because naming things makes them real. Hidden camera lens. Cables tucked and taped through the wall behind her chair. Empty medicine cabinet. Unmarked sedative in the kitchen drawer. 2 men with a folder. A guy in scrubs who acts like he doesn't want to be a nurse on paper. He looked at me. And a form titled Declaration of Incapacity. I saw your grandmother's name where a signature would go. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't know. Why did you leave? I showed Daniel. He said, don't answer, and turned onto a side street with a church at the end. He parked behind trees that hid us from the road, pulled a tiny adapter and a thumb drive from the glove box and handed them to me. Photos, he said. Enough to make a cop stop what he's doing. Are we calling? I asked. We are, he said and dialed. The dispatcher sounded calm in the way that makes you believe a person's job is to bring rooms back to level. Daniel gave our names, our address, and the words that mattered: sedative conservatorship fraud. He didn't accuse, he described. She told us to meet officers at a gas station 2 miles north or wait where we were if we felt safe. We chose the station. On the drive, the town looked like a place pressed flat by a heavy book diner, firehouse library, all exactly where I left them, only thinner. We parked by the ice machine. Daniel backed into the spot so he could watch the exit and the pumps and the road. My father's SUV passed through the light and kept going. If he saw us, he didn't look. 2 cruisers slid in lights, steady sirens quiet. An officer knocked. Daniel lowered the window. We stepped out. He handed over the thumb drive. I held up my phone with the text still on the screen. The officer listened like a person building a case in his head, plank by plank. He asked if Grandma was conscious. Mostly. Could we come back with them? Yes. Maple Ridge Lane looked drained of color. The music had stopped. The banner hung at a tilt. The officers went in first. Clara appeared in the foyer with lipstick faded and a smile put on too fast. Is there a problem? She asked. We received a report concerning the welfare of Margaret Blake, the taller officer said. Is she here? It's her birthday, Clara said, stepping aside like it proved something. Grandma sat beneath the mantle shawl, fallen to her waist, the cake half sliced and sinking at the edges. My father stood near the photos as if he could back into one and disappear. "Ma'am," the officer said to Grandma, voice softening. "What's your name?" "Margaret Blake," she said, sleep thick in the syllables. "And do you know what day it is?" She paused, then found it. "My birthday." "Where are her medications?" he asked Clara. "In the bathroom," Clara said, quick enough to trip. The second officer went with her. They returned with empty hands. "Nothing there," he said. "We moved them for safety," my father offered. "Children around." "Where are they now?" the officer asked. "In a safe place," my father said. The sentence hung until it fell. Paramedics arrived with gentle efficiency. Vitals, blood sugar, pressure. One of them glanced at the officers and nodded toward the kitchen. The taller officer asked my father to step into the den. He asked Clara for any documents regarding Grandma's care. She said there weren't any. He waited. She held her clipboard tighter. Grandma's hand slipped. I caught it. Her fingers squeezed with a strength I thought was gone. She found my face. "Don't let them take me," she said. Not pleading, just choosing. "You're not going anywhere you don't choose," I told her. I meant it with my whole body. The officer laid a paper on the coffee table. Beside the cake, a notary stamp, a title, a line for a signature shaped like my grandmother's name. Daniel's photos matched the page like twins. The room exhaled the truth. "Ma'am, sir," the officer said to Clara, "and my father, I'll need you to come outside." Clara looked at my father. He looked at the paper. No one laughed. The house held still as if it finally recognized itself. Under the porch light, the officer's voice turned firm without turning cruel. He explained what would happen: statements, evidence collection, welfare check becoming an investigation. The words elder abuse and fraud sounded clean, not sensational. They landed like the names of things we already knew. Clara tried to argue that Grandma had been confused all afternoon, that she'd nearly consented to a move to a memory care facility, that they were merely preparing options she'd want if she were thinking clearly. The officer held up the paper. "This isn't preparation," he said. "It's execution." My father's jaw tightened. He didn't contradict the word. Inside, the paramedic packed their kit and lowered the gurney. Grandma's eyes tracked the ceiling light, then me. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To the hospital, just to check," I said. "Then wherever you choose." She considered, that nodded once, and let her head rest back. When the paramedics rolled her through the doorway, the shawl slipped. I lifted it and tucked it around her shoulders, the way she used to tuck blankets around my knees when a thunderstorm reached our block. Daniel stood beside me, a quiet line of heat and steadiness. He didn't say we were right or brave. He said, "You did what you came to do," and the house, for the first time all day, felt like air. The neighbors' windows glowed across the street. Hydrangeas turned gray-blue in the darkness. The banner inside still shouted, "Happy 85, a headline for a story that had shifted genres. An officer escorted Clara and my father to separate cars. No handcuffs? Not yet. Just process, methodical, and undeniable. When the ambulance doors closed, I climbed in. Daniel squeezed my shoulder, promised to follow, and jogged to the car. The siren stayed off. We didn't need urgency. We needed clarity. Grandma watched the monitor's green line climb and fall. "You always did notice what mattered," she murmured. "You taught me how," I said. Her mouth relaxed. The paramedic asked for my name and number, asked which medications Grandma was prescribed. I told him the names, dosages, schedule, the litany of a life you keep safe by keeping track. He wrote them down, each a beat in a steadying song. Behind us, Maple Ridge Lane receded into the dark like a set-after curtain. Ahead, the hospital lights gathered into something that looked like morning. At the hospital, they warmed a blanket in a machine that hummed and tucked it around Grandma like a promise. Daniel arrived with a sweater from our trunk and her reading glasses I'd tossed in a bag. I sat by the bed and told her about the first pie crust we made together, how we swore off store-bought and broke that oath every Thanksgiving anyway. She smiled without opening her eyes. In the morning, I called the caterer, thanked them, and paid the balance because the staff had done their jobs. I asked the bakery to send one small lemon pie to room 412, with no writing. When it came, Grandma ate 3 tart bites and declared it imperfect, which sounded like her and like hope. Daniel and I walked out to the parking lot afterward, the September air cool against our faces. For the first time in years, the silence between us felt like peace instead of distance. He reached for my hand, not urgently, just steady, the same way he had at the party when he told me to move. Only this time we weren't escaping, we were choosing where to stand. The house on Maple Ridge will be a legal tangle for months, maybe years. Lawyers' hearings, papers. But the essential thing already happened. We didn't confuse performance with love. We didn't let convenience rewrite consent. We chose the part of our family worth keeping. When I close my eyes, I still feel Daniel's tap on my wrist, the quiet language that says, move, that says, trust. I did. We did. And if anyone asks what we saved that night, I'll say, not just a house, not just an account, but something larger. We save the truth of who we are when family stops pretending and finally decides to be real. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.